Hello and welcome to Marketing Speak. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, and it's my pleasure to have Caelan Huntress with us. Caelan is the author of Marketing Yourself and the creative director of Stellar Platforms, a digital marketing agency that helps experts and entrepreneurs set up smart marketing systems. He's an American digital nomad living in New Zealand and has spent 10 years running an online business while traveling the world with his young family. Caelan, it's so great to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me, Stephan. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, me too. Me too. So, for one thing, I really love that you picked New Zealand as a place to settle down. It's such an amazing, beautiful, magical part of the world. I lived there for 7.5 years. I moved back to the US in 2007. It was such a gift to be able to raise my daughters in New Zealand and have them experience nature and kind of the ethos of a slower, more centered life. So that was really beautiful. I'm curious to hear what brought you to New Zealand and what keeps you there.
Well, when we left the United States, we went to Costa Rica. And I'd love to say that we've been gallivanting around the world because I'm independently wealthy and we could just travel wherever we wanted. But that wasn't the reality for my family. America broke us. And so when we went to Costa Rica, we were picking up the pieces. I went with my 2 kids and my pregnant wife to have a baby in Costa Rica. He's an anchor baby. He's a citizen in that Central American country, and we're all permanent residents. And living in Costa Rica gave us health care that wouldn't bankrupt us. It protected us from that very American challenge that I know a lot of your listeners are dealing with. And so we lived in Costa Rica for a number of years and really enjoyed it. But Costa Rica wants to eat you. It's got bugs and spiders and snakes. And when you have 3 little kids, that's really stressful. So we thought, what if this was completely different? And we went somewhere with no natural predators. And so we came to New Zealand, and everything that you've heard, that people have heard about New Zealand, the hobbits, the unicorns, it's all true. It's a magical place. All the nature, as you said.
Including the big tower with the eye on it. Yeah, that's real too.
Yeah, they've got the Sauron Tower, like you got to throw the one ring in there every couple of years.
And how long have you been in New Zealand for?
5 years.
5 years. Okay. And how long were you in Costa Rica for?
I was in Costa Rica for about 3.5 years. And then we went back to the States for a little bit to be with some family. We had some family members passing on. And then after we were there for just a little while, the American culture was, it's a unique kind of culture to raise children in. And when we looked at the options of raising our kids in different cultures where we've been to, we looked at New Zealand as a really wholesome place where we could raise our kids. And Jacinda Ardern, who's currently the prime minister, right after she won her election, she revealed that she was pregnant. And in a speech before the UN General Assembly, she said that her goal was to make New Zealand the best place in the world to raise a child. And having that sort of stated goal from the political leadership is, it gives a different direction to a culture. And so we found that living in New Zealand has been a really great match for our family. We live down in the South Island on the Pacific Ocean. So there's nothing between me and Antarctica but ocean, but water. And there's a penguin colony a mile from my house. So it's amazing being down here.
That's awesome. Or is it the, what are they, the yellow-eyed penguins? Is that what they're called?
The yellow-eyed penguins. Those are the ones. Yeah. Yeah, but the neat thing about being so far out here in the wilderness, Stephan, is that because we have fiber optic internet connection, I can still connect with people all around the world. The remote work has removed the necessity to live where the action is, and digital nomads can really live anywhere in the world and still be extremely online.
That is so true. When I picked up and moved to New Zealand it was actually 1999 still, it was not as challenging as I thought it might be. I didn't know what I was in for because I had literally never stepped foot into the country before applying for residency, a permanent residency, and getting in. So it was quite a leap of faith that it would work out, but it worked out fabulously. It was such a great experience. So, what makes a remote work situation or digital nomad type situation successful or not successful in your view?
Great question. For me, it's always been about portability. My ability to put my business into a backpack and go to any desk anywhere that I can get Wi-Fi and caffeine has been essential to my success because we traveled so much. It didn't matter what town I was in. If I got into a co-working space or a cafe where I could connect online, I could open up my backpack and surround myself with the tools in moments that I needed to run my business. And so a lot of the physical tools had to be pared down. I had to live very minimalistically. And once I had that setup that was portable and I could take it anywhere, then I had to build a digital infrastructure that supported my business. And a lot of this relies on automation. Being able to give someone a calendar link and say, yes, let's talk. Here, my systems will set it up, but I don't have to do the back and forth emails 6 times to find a time on the calendar because the systems automate that. I found that very helpful for running an online business.
Mm-hmm. So what are some of the systems that you're using? Obviously, a calendar a system like Calendly or Acuity or Schedule Once, I guess it's called something else now. What is it? I forget their new brand name. But anyways, I use Acuity. Curious to hear what sort of tools are the essential parts of good digital infrastructure for a remote work environment.
Yeah, well, I'd say that Calendly, which is the one that I use, that's how I set up my scheduling, and I spend a lot of time on Zoom because a lot of my work, Stephan, is coaching experts and entrepreneurs or consulting on their systems and helping them streamline the journey from stranger to customer. And so interacting with people on video calls is a large part of what I do. I use FreshBooks for invoicing. That makes the money side of my business really easy. But I'd say the most essential software that I use is a task manager. You know, I don't know if you've read Getting Things Done by David
I
Allen.
love that book. Yes,
Fantastic book.
actually I've interviewed David Allen multiple times.
Have you really?
And
Wow.
yeah, yeah. So those episodes are on my other podcast, my productivity, personal development, spirituality podcast, Get Yourself Optimized. But yeah, he's phenomenal. And
Yeah.
GTD, Getting Things Done, the whole methodology, not just the book, has changed my life. It changed my life back in the I don't know, at least a decade ago, maybe a decade and a half ago when I first read it. Yeah, it really just spoke to me. I loved the idea of getting stuff out of my head into a trusted system. And at the
Mhm.
time, I was writing stuff on the backs of envelopes and on post-it notes and you know, text pad type apps and all. It was like it was the information was everywhere, and thus I didn't trust any particular system, so it had to all stay in my head. And that's yeah, I love what he says about your brain. It's not meant to be a warehouse. It's not good at that. It's meant to be a factory.
Yeah, he said your mind is for having ideas, not holding them.
Yeah.
I love that. And what I learned from him that was so transformational, Stefan, is that uh, having an inbox where you can put everything that you then sort. You know, that
Mm-hmm.
universal destination. I have a hotkey on my keyboard where I hit Command Space, and then I just put in the idea for the program I use is called Things by Cultured Code. It's a Mac only
I use
program,
it
but there's a
too.
lot
Yeah,
of
yeah.
different. Is that yours too? Yeah, it's a great program.
Yep. I will not ever switch, I think.
I tried.
I, I
I've
I
been using.
I was using it and I was thinking maybe I should switch to something like what is it that's the big OmniFocus. That's the big
Mhm,
competitor to
mhm.
things in the GTD space. And I'm like,
Yeah,
yeah, no, it's too
yeah.
complicated.
After
Things is just so much better.
Yeah, it really is. I had used things for 3 or 4 years when I was living in Costa Rica, and I thought, well, let me see if there's another app. And so I spent about 3 months testing different apps, and I came back to Things by Cultured Code because the interface is so great and minimal, and just the way that it sorts things I found to be very helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Is there any particular way of structuring um, your Things app, and like how you set up your trusted system? Because I know that David teaches how you have an action box or folder, and you have a read review folder, and a waiting for, and what are some of the other ones? So waiting for,
Someday maybe.
someday maybe. Thank you. That one is built into Things. I like
Yeah, that
that.
one's built in.
But you have to kind of
Yeah.
kludge your way into having waiting for as a, either a tag or something like that. Yeah. So I'm curious to hear,
Yeah.
how do you set that up in Things, and how do you set it up also in your email?
Well, what I found was deficient in the Things program was I didn't have a place for things that were top of mind. In David Allen's parlance, this is waiting. But for me, it's not just things I'm waiting for, but things I need to keep thinking about and I can't necessarily put down. And so the two top projects I have in my Things interface, when I go to today and it lists everything by project, if you drag and drop the projects on the left hand side, then it drags and drops those categories on the right hand side. And so I found it was really helpful to have two special projects right up at the top, and I call them top of mind and next. So that way, if there's
Mm.
something where it's like, it's urgent, I got to do this right away. And yeah, I can dip into other projects and work on that. But when I have that moment where I pull back from my work and I'm like, okay, what am I doing? And then I have those two projects right at the top of mind and next, and that could contain something from any project. And I found that to be very helpful.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I
Yeah.
I have a project, or it's actually called an area in Things parlance. So areas of focus, right? You have areas of focus, and you have projects. And the area of focus, I call it hot, which is kind of like
Nice.
similar to what you're describing. And then
Yeah.
the projects that I consider to be hot, I put there so that they're
Smart.
way up near the top. And I have a
Yeah.
massive list of projects, and crazy. It's insane how many to dos I have in Things. It probably adds up to at least 5,000, if not 6,000.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
Yeah. And it's
I'm
hard to
prolific
delete
with
those
ideas,
things.
which is really,
Yeah.
a wonderful gift, and it is overwhelming. So I get overwhelmed when I go into Things, and it kind of stresses me out a bit. Do you feel that too, or have you figured out a workaround for that?
Yeah. Well, I like having a storehouse of ideas. And I find that the creative process, Stefan, it's got 5 steps. That there's the first step is to collect all your ideas. And
Hmm.
this applies not just for productivity and task management, but also for any creative project you're working on. You want to collect ideas throughout your life. It's not something you sit down to do, but in the midst of other things you're working on, you say, "Oh, that idea would be good for over here." And so you need some system to collect those ideas. And the second step in the creative process is to sort those
Yep.
ideas. And that's something that's good to do during, dedicated time. If you're working on a project, you can go through your collection and say, what do I have here? What really matters? What could I use in something? And deciding what to keep in and what to postpone or to delete. That sorting process culls that volume down to something that's manageable to work with. And then once you know how much you want to work with, the third step is to craft. And crafting might be writing something or designing something or putting things together, but it's some way of assembling the pieces together into the thing that you're going to create. The fourth step
Uh-huh.
is to polish, to make it ready to show the world. And the fifth step is to publish. And going through those 5 steps, collect, sort, craft, polish, and publish, I find that having this framework helps me produce a lot more than if I was just doing whatever I felt like doing in the moment.
Did you come up with this on your own, or is this based on another thought leader or
Well, I haven't seen
framework?
anybody else lay out this framework in this way, so I guess it's my framework. I've done a little bit of writing on it, and I find that these 5 steps happen to be the categories that I go through. I don't know if they're the steps that everybody goes through, but I find this framework to be the most useful when I'm feeling like, okay, I need to produce something and get it out into the world. Which of these 5 stages am I having a roadblock? I'll go work on that stage to push this project forward.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Are you familiar with? He's based in Australia. His company is called Thought Leaders. I forget
Matt
his
Church,
name.
he runs Thought Leaders Business
Matt
School.
Church.
I am
Thank
in
you.
that program.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been a
That's
member of
awesome.
Thought Leaders Business School for more than 2 years.
Small world, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's awesome. So anyways, I've had Matt Church on the podcast, and we talked about pink sheets, which I learned about from Taki Moore. I love pink sheets. I love this idea of having a repository of all your bits, your information nuggets that you want to incorporate into things like articles and PowerPoints and social media posts and books, of course, and to have the context, the content, the metaphor, the case studies, and all that figured out in advance, so you can just whip that out of your kind of Rolodex of ideas and IP nuggets. That's really phenomenal, and yet I haven't really implemented it. I tried, I started, and then I didn't put it into practice. So it's a great methodology, but if you're not gonna put it into practice, it's just theory. It just is edutainment. So are
It's a
you
nice
must be
idea.
familiar with pink sheets, right?
Very. Yeah, I have a catalog of pink sheets, and pink sheets are actually how I wrote my book, Marketing Yourself. What I did to write this book, Stephan, is I used a pink sheet per chapter. And I did the intellectual thinking first. And I said, okay, these are the pink sheets for what I want to talk about. And I identified 24 and I put them in a progression and I put them on a Trello board because I'm a marketer. I like to systematize things. And for every pink sheet, I wrote a newsletter. And that newsletter followed a 7-step formula that I use for a lot of my newsletters. You start with a story and a startling statistic and you go through it. But the pink sheet gave me all the material I needed to fill in this formula and create an article. And so I spent a few months just writing a newsletter on each pink sheet that I had in my pink sheet deck. And when I went through 24 of them, I took those blog posts that I had syndicated. I sent them out through ConvertKit. I published them on my blog. I published them on Medium. And so it was generating a lot of content that was building an audience of people who said, hey, this guy talks about marketing. I'm going to keep reading what he has to say. And so I was building my audience before I even wrote the book. And then I took those 24 articles and I put them into Trello and I dragged and dropped them. And I said, what's the order here? What's the progression? And I found the order that I wanted them to be into. And then I just copy and pasted the articles, dropped them into a Google Doc, and I had a first draft of the manuscript. And so editing that manuscript, the work that I was already producing and publishing, what was really neat is that when I published these articles on Medium, and I submitted them to publications, I had editors going through and editing my articles to make them tighter and make them better. So the first draft of my book had already gone through some free editing from other writers on the internet. And I found this to be a really effective way to produce my book, Stephan. And it's because of the pink sheets, these modular pieces of intellectual property that you can put into 15 minutes of a keynote or a chapter of a book. They allow me to reuse my material without having to think about it again because I've got this great digest of the idea on one worksheet that I can pull out anytime I need it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really cool. I know there were some early innovators in the world of blogs becoming books, like John Battelle
Mm-hmm.
created the book The Search from his blog. I believe that the Long Tail also started as a blog.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's his last name? Anderson. Um,
I just finished reading Mark
Chris
Manson's
Anderson.
book.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Chris Anderson. Yes, he wrote The Long
Oh,
Tail.
Chris Anderson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is really cool. I love how you apply those concepts of pink sheets. You're putting this into action, which is what's that's where the rubber meets the road, and that's where I
Yeah.
kind of failed. You know, my Colby score is 3393. The 9 is for quick start. So follow through and the researching, which is fact finder, is what that's called, and the forget what the other one is, but they're all 3 for me. So it's just I'm just fast and loose with everything, and I need a cleanup crew to follow me around to make these projects come to fruition, and dot the I's and cross the T's, sort of thing. But I'm, like I said, prolific with ideas, and I can start projects, businesses, campaigns, just like that. But yeah, getting the systems in place, getting the team around me to help me to bring these to fruition, critically important, or I wouldn't get anything done.
Yeah. Yeah, what you have is a gift, Stephan. A lot of people can't generate ideas at the volume and quality that you can. And so partnering with other people who can support your ideation, it makes something that's much different than somebody who has a more balanced Colby score. The trick is to find out how can you take your advantages and apply those to a team where it can help things grow.
Yeah. Yeah. So you
And I
have
think
an agency or you're part of an agency called Stellar Platforms. So presumably the whole team is remote, and how tell me how that's set up and how you fit into the picture.
Yeah, well, I'm the creative director of Stellar Platforms, and that's just the title that I gave myself because I didn't want to get spammed on LinkedIn because my title was CEO founder. So, quick tip, if you're getting too much LinkedIn spam, get out of those searches where people are saying, who's the founder I can pitch to? My LinkedIn spam is very low because of that. But also the
That's
idea of being a
hilarious.
creative director aligns with me better than owner, or I could call myself a marketing automation specialist because I do a lot of the digging in and actually doing the systematized work. But as the creative director, I think of myself as somebody who says, well, these are the projects that we're going to do, and let's go in this direction and do it. And I hire contractors from around the world for any project that I'm focused on. Some contractors have been working with me for years, and some of them are just working with me for a specific project for a specific period of time. And I like the flexibility of that framework, Stephan, because then it means that I can expand or reduce my team as needed, depending on how many clients that I have coming in.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, what will be an example of a project or client that you're in the midst of changing their lives, their businesses?
Yeah, well, I've had some really great clients. I've been fortunate enough to work with New York Times bestselling authors, Hall of Fame public speakers, and nationally syndicated radio hosts. And the niche that I focused on for a long time was authors, coaches, and speakers. People who had something to say and something to sell, but they needed help with the systems. And a lot of systems people, you can give a systems thinker your Infusionsoft logins and they can go and get in there and make the campaign. But what's that campaign going to say? what's going to actually create an emotional reaction with the audience. Most systems people don't have that writing hat that they can put on, where they understand the customer needs. So they don't know what to put in those specific digital assets. And that's a lot of the unique value that I bring, is that I can wear all the hats. I can write the copy for the landing page and design it and integrate it with Zapier. And that gives me the ability to outsource in bulk to contractors if I need to produce a lot of assets. And when I worked with Lisa Garr, the host of the Aware Show, she's a book interviewing show, the Aware Show, and she interviews authors in the fields of neuroscience, consciousness, and spirituality. And when I worked with her as her digital marketing manager, we ran online summits. This is back in 2015, 2016, when summits were kind of new. And so I would produce a suite of sales pages for every guest on the summit. And she'd interview 10 different authors on a topic. And the only qualification that we had for the authors is that they had an online course with an affiliate program. And at the end of the interview, Lisa would promote the on-air hop link. Go to theawareshow.com/Asaraf, because she's interviewing John Asaraf, and you can get this special program that he's put together at a special price for Aware Show listeners. And so I built a volume of sales pages, and it got me really good at producing the end-to-end sales funnel quickly, because I had to produce them in batches of 10. We ran a 2-week telesummit with 10 different authors. And then 6 weeks later, we'd run another one. And it just became this machine where we were running these summits and mailing them out to her list, and the guests would mail them out to their lists. And so everybody grew their lists, and we generated a bunch of revenue. That was a really good project.
Oh, that's cool. So does she still do online summits?
Well, online summits changed. And this is one of the problems with internet advice, is that it goes stale. If you Google online summits, you're going to get a lot of blog posts from people talking about how lucrative they can be because they wrote this blog post in 2015. And because of the domain age, Google's going to rank that post pretty high. But the market has changed. And so the only way to find out what's really working, Stephan, and I'm sure you've seen this in your marketing work, is to test what's working right now. And when we first started doing telesummits, it was easy. We generated $250,000 of revenue per summit, and we did that 6 times in a row. And then we noticed the students started to dry up. And it wasn't just us. I checked with my colleagues in the industry. Around 2017, people stopped paying $300 for a passive online course, because they realized that this ticket price, it only got them access to content that they were responsible for putting into a curriculum and teaching themselves. The very things that we get from a classroom experience, access to the teacher to answer your questions, a cohort of peers working through the material with you, feedback from others on your interpretation of the material. You don't get any of that in an online course. And so online courses changed so that by 2019, there were still lots of marketers saying, if you put together an online course on how to sell online courses like me, then you can kick back and it's hula girls and margaritas. And that was the messaging that was going out there. But I was working with lots of people who were hiring me to make online courses for them, thinking that it was this key to passive revenue. And I had to stop taking that work, because people weren't getting the results. If they didn't have a big enough list, if they didn't have product market fit, if they didn't have a strong relationship with an audience or a product that solved a specific problem, then it was really hard to sell it for higher than the price of a book. Because an online course is consumed like a book. You open it when you want to, and you close it when you're done. And I found a lot more success with experts and entrepreneurs who put together a book-priced online course where it's $25. It's a way to, learn about my content, learn a little bit about me. But Mirasee put out this survey in 2019, and they interviewed, I think it was more than like 3,000 course creators. It's a pretty big sample size. And they said, how do you make your money? Where's your revenue coming from? And only 3% of the respondents had a majority of their revenue coming from online courses. Most people who have online courses for sale, they get most of their revenue from services, from coaching, from consulting. And so knowing what's happening under the hood with marketing, I find this to be really essential, is to be able to ignore some of the well-meaning but wrong advice that has now gone stale and find out what's actually happening. And a lot of times the only way you can know what's actually happening is by running experiments yourself, putting out an online course for $300 and seeing if people buy it, relaunching it for $25 and seeing if you can convert that into expensive high-end services. Those two types of business models are very different, but they use the same assets. And helping people make those strategic decisions, that's the sort of work that I do at Stellar Platforms.
I got it. That makes a lot of sense. And so what is working right now? If it's not online summits, is it challenges, like 5 or 7 day challenges? Is it the ask survey, ask method surveying, or is that kind of jumps the shark as well? Like what's the latest stuff that's really working?
Well, I see people having good experience with lead generation and quizzes. Mm-hmm. Quizzes give the opportunity to harvest data, and a lot of the Ryan Levesque type questions that allow you to gather those phrases from your audience. You can insert those into quizzes, and quizzes also allow you to feed back a score or a result. The giving people a result based on your answers. You're this type of person, and you should do this type of thing. That gives that superficial understanding of oneself that people are willing to give an email address for. I'm still seeing good results with automation. People who have email automation and they're building their list. In that first phase of email automation, you can generate more revenue from your onboarding sequence than from your email newsletter. And this is according to data put out by Campaign Monitor. They found that 320% more revenue is generated from automated emails as opposed to non-automated emails. So it's not that broadcast to your list of people who have been subscribing to you for 5 years. That's not where the real money's to be made. The real money in email automation is building your list with new people and making offers to them right as soon as they enter the sequence. I'm doing a lot of investigation into Web3. I play around with crypto because I know Web 2 marketing really well, but Web 3 is a new space. And I'm fascinated by the journey that people go through as they're learning about a crypto project, as they're interacting in Discord and Telegram, which are two of the biggest platforms for people to interact in that space. But it's very new. Everybody in it is an early adopter. And so the way that they interact is going to be different than the way that the laggards are going to interact when they enter the space in a couple of years. So the space is really changing. I wish I had a snappy answer for you of this is what's working right now. But if I gave that answer to you, you shouldn't trust it, because by the time your listeners hear that, it might be obsolete. Marketing is changing so fast that we can make hypotheses about what we think will work, and we can test those hypotheses. But the best way to find out what's actually working for your type of business, Stephan, is to run multiple experiments and pay attention to where you actually see results.
Mm-hmm. Yep. This is good stuff. This is very good stuff. So I, speaking of Web3, just launched with my friend and colleague, Greg Merrilees, a site called worstofweb3.com, which is a parody site of all the worst practices that we see pretty much across the board with all these Web3 websites, whether it's an NFT project a cryptocurrency, some sort of a blockchain technology platform service provider. They seem to be doing the same silly, just unaware things like white text on a black background, um, gratuitous spinning things that don't really add any value to the page, just load time, and a lot of convoluted jargon, technical jargon, things that people will not understand unless they're immersed in this world of Web3. What the heck is total value lock? I don't know, right? I mean, I know, but it's very hard for somebody who's new to that world to make sense of a Web3 website. It's Greek. It's like a foreign language. So
Yeah.
I want to plug that fun site that we just launched. It's a parody, so don't take it too seriously. And we're not picking on any one particular website. It's just a mishmash of some of their different mistakes.
Bad practices. Yeah, there's
Yeah,
so many to choose from,
there
right?
are.
And this is
Yeah.
something that we find on the cutting edge. It's rough. This is how things get sharpened, is it goes through friction. And so on the cutting edge, in a space that's as new as Web3, there's a lot of people who don't know UX best practices, who don't know how to design for the consumer, but they know blockchain programming and they can make smart contracts and throw together a basic website. And so part of the difficulty of being in a new space is that there's this friction everywhere, but it's also part of the opportunity, because it means that there's a lot of problems to fix, problems that the intelligent people who are developing a new technology haven't even thought of and considered. And so I've been learning about Web3 because I know my Web2 marketing skills are going to be obsolete. Sometime in the next 5 to 10 years, email automation might not even be necessary because there's a completely different way that we interact online. And so I'm fascinated by this new space in Web3 and the different ways that we're changing how we communicate.
Yeah. Well, email and all that stuff may be obsolete because telepathy might be the next thing.
Who knows?
So I'm curious to hear what some of your favorite tips and mistakes to avoid are for Zoom, because you've spoken a lot about this. I've attended some of your uh, um, like trainings and presentations around Zoom best practices. So what to do in terms of the background and the positioning of the camera and lighting, and what to do in terms of what to wear and all that sort of stuff. Is, there's some really great tips on. I remember now, it just popped in my head. You gave some great Zoom based games to foster kind of team building and interactivity amongst the cohorts. If you're dealing with small groups of people, or you can break them up into breakout groups. Yeah, you had some fun games from memory. Am I correct me if I'm wrong? But tell me what
Oh,
some
yeah.
of your latest best tips are around Zoom.
Yeah. I spend a lot of time on Zoom. And when the pandemic started, I found myself at this really unique crossroads of performance and technology. Because I've been a digital marketer for 10 years. I'm very comfortable with tech. And as a remote worker, I've been using Zoom for a long time. But I'm also a performer. In addition to being a professional keynote speaker, I started my career as an acrobat in the circus. I've spent a lot of time on stage. And so developing a relationship with an audience and learning how to earn and maintain their attention, that's given me a lot of practical tools that I use in my work as a marketer. But when the pandemic started, Stephan, I found myself doing a lot of work with companies that had in-person workshops they needed to convert to virtual. and they needed to do it fast. And so that was a lot of my business in 2020, was helping people gamify their workshops and translate them into a virtual Zoom experience. And I, as soon as the pandemic hit and I saw everybody was locking down, I took every course I could and found every expert I could in virtual facilitation and learned everything I could to quickly become one of the foremost experts in presenting online. I teach a course through eSpeakers, which is a professional speaker directory, teaching other professional speakers how to give better Zoom presentations. And what I've learned is that the camera and the lighting, that's all the basic stuff. And there's ways to set yourself up so that, you're up high enough and you're not down low, so that you're close to your microphone instead of far away. There's ways that you can come through better in terms of presentation. But what I find is the most effective for earning attention is games and activities with the participants. And this is something that's unique about live presentation that you can't do in a replay. In a replay, people watch passively, but in a live interactive environment, you can ask them for feedback. You can gather contribution and work that contribution into your presentation. And so some of the work that I do right now, I'm kind of transitioning my business. I've got the marketing side where I help experts and entrepreneurs set up smart marketing systems. But I've been doing a lot of work in this field that I'm calling playful productivity, where I help corporate teams with hybrid team culture. And I'll do play sessions where, I'll teach productivity tactics through play and how to gamify your work, and facilitate games sessions that allow a distributed team who's working remotely to develop those relationships that we used to do around the water cooler. And the most practical tip I can give, Stephan, is to begin a meeting with an unofficial start. And an unofficial start goes from 5 minutes before the scheduled time of a meeting to 3 minutes after the scheduled time. And it's some activity where when people arrive, you can invite them to participate, to open up the chat box and use it to interact with one another. And it also postpones the meeting from starting at the top of the hour. Because if you get the calendar invitation and it's 8:00 and you hit join and, you got to update Zoom and, this program's in the way and, you got to restart, there's some confusion that's inevitable at the beginning. And if you can create a space where people can come in early and have some interaction, but you're not missing anything if you enter the doors a little late, then it preserves the environment and invites activity. I find that if you ask somebody to use the chat box in the beginning of a meeting, it's much more likely that they're going to use it in the middle. But if you ask for the chat box to be open for the first time, 20 minutes in, there's momentum you have to overcome. And so starting with an unofficial start that educates your participants on the things that you're going to be doing throughout the presentation, I found that to be very effective.
Yeah, that's a great tip. What would be an example of an activity that would be fun and, gamifying the Zoom experience for somebody and, doesn't seem too arbitrary or just ridiculous?
Well, here, I'll show you, if you're watching this on the video, I've got a presentation I'm doing later today, and I've got this slide. It's not sized quite right, but here, let me get it up behind me. So if you're watching this on the audio, sorry, you won't be able to see this. But I asked people on a scale of cat, how are you feeling today? Pick a cat. You either type a number in the chat box or you use the stamp tool. It's kind of difficult to find the stamp tool, but in the middle of my presentation that I'm giving later today, I'm going to ask people to use the stamp tool in the Zoom whiteboard. And so, like they can pick on the scale of dog. How are you feeling today? Pick a dog. And everybody who picked 6, why did you pick 6? But the easiest one I find, this is another one I do, I ask them to stamp on the world map. And since New Zealand is often left off the world map, I put it front and center. But this is the easiest one, is what time is it where you are? Type it in the chat box. What time is it? And that way people around the world can get a sense of who's in the room. But the Ryan Levesque question, what's the hardest thing? Asking some people to put in the chat box, what's the hardest thing about this topic? This is a great way to get engagement right in the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like it. So what is, in your opinion, what is the hardest thing about marketing yourself?
Well, I've been asking this question for a couple of years because, if I'm going to write the book on marketing yourself, I want to know what other people think about what the hardest thing is. So that, because what I think might be different. I've got skills that are different than the people who are reading my book. And what I hear from people is that the hardest thing about marketing yourself is consistently staying on message, setting up systems so you don't have to spend all your time troubleshooting the tech, dealing with imposter syndrome. If I'm going to get up on stage and share my message, won't people know I'm a fraud? This is really common with people who have a personal brand, is dealing with imposter syndrome. And dealing with that, it's part of the game. If you're going to get up on a stage and share your message to an audience, there's going to be people who dislike the type of person that you are. Shining attracts haters. They're going to see, oh, I hate people like that. And I'm going to tell you why, because you were bold enough to stand up and take that position. So I'm going to take out my trauma on you. Knowing that that's part of the game and being able to develop the thick skin to deal with it and move on and still share your message, that's part of the work of marketing yourself.
Yeah. It's a lot easier to be a critic than a creator. And when you're a critic,
Yeah.
you've basically shut off your creator part of you. And when you're a creator, you probably shut off the critic part of yourself so that you can just get into flow.
Yeah. Since it's on topic, I'm going to share this quote with you from Theodore Roosevelt. This quote he did about the arena?
I don't.
He said, and I happen to have this up because it's in the presentation I'm giving later today. He said, "It's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who know neither victory nor defeat." Theodore Roosevelt, the man in the arena.
That's a great quote. I haven't heard that before. Yeah. So there's a lot of opportunity for folks who are action takers, who are willing to get their face dirty. And the critics who stand on the side with their commentary, they're missing the real game. If now one thing that kind of relates to this is you've, as a digital nomad and a remote worker, you've trimmed down a lot of the unnecessary fluff. You can carry everything in a backpack, sort of thing. So that feels to me like you've probably read the book Essentialism. Have you?
Essentialism, I haven't. But it sounds like the type of book I like. I'll get it.
Yeah. You would like that book. Yeah. Or another one similar to that is The One Thing by Gary Keller. So that book, the co-founder of Keller Williams Real Estate, he said there's only one question that matters when you're trying to figure out what to pare down, and that is, what is the one thing that if that is done, I can cut out a whole bunch of other things, make them either obsolete or otherwise unnecessary or already completed. And he's always asking that question of himself, what's that one thing? So that he can get right to that essential one thing and cut out everything else. You might also,
because you don't want to be distracted.
You You might also have heard about this before, and it's I think it's attributed to who's the big billionaire? Um, gosh, uh,
Which one? There's so many
Warren
big billionaires to
Warren
choose from
Buffett.
nowadays.
Okay, there we go.
Warren Buffett.
Warren Buffett supposedly had told somebody, or this is his system. You have 25 different top priorities, projects, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and you put them in priority order, and then you can pick. Maybe it's 5. It's a small number of the 20.
The top 5.
And then the other 20, you are not allowed to work on until the first 5 are done.
Yeah, he calls that your avoid at all costs list. That 20 after the 5, because that's what's going to be most likely to distract you from, I can't remember who said the quote, but what keeps us from our goals isn't the obstacles in front of us, but it's a clear path to a lesser goal. That's what actually keeps you from achieving what you want. Michelangelo said our risk for most of us is not that we aim too high and we miss it, but that we aim too low and we achieve it.
That's good.
Yeah.
Oh, you have so many great quotes. You must have those on pink sheets.
I do. Well, I have a good memory, so, and I do a lot of reading, and so I remember a lot of these, and I archive a lot of these in my Things program. Anytime I have a quote where I'm like, "That's good," it goes in my Things program, and I organize it in systems. And I have a lot of my best marketing quotes in my book, Marketing Yourself, from people that I've admired or people that I've learned from, where I found quotes that I think are going to be helpful for people on this journey of developing their own personality-based brand. There's a lot of those quotes in my book.
Speaking of your book, you can get a free chapter, you listener, by going to a particular URL. Do you want to share that, Caelan?
Yeah, my book's got its own website, marketingyourselfbook.com. And there's a link in the top for free chapter. But if you go to marketingyourselfbook.com/free chapter and you subscribe to my Stellar Platforms newsletter, then I'll send you the first chapter for free. The first chapter's on your personal statement. And it's got a formula for developing a personal statement, which is kind of a distilled version of an elevator pitch. Instead of taking 2 minutes to share, it's something you can put on a sticky note. It's something that shares who you are, what you do, and why you're amazing. And I give some formulas and a couple dozen examples of personal statements of other people that they've used for elevating their own personal platform. And so marketingyourselfbook.com/free chapter is where your listeners can go to get that chapter.
That's awesome. And you also have these companion workbooks or online courses that go with each of the chapters, right, of the book. So you call those workbooks, correct?
Yeah, and most of them are Google Docs. The workbooks I developed because, every chapter in my book ends with an extra resource. Depending on which chapter it is, there's going to be a resource that I've already developed in my work with experts and entrepreneurs when I want to help people develop their personal statement or lay out a sales funnel or a value ladder or develop a free consultation progression of questions. I've built these templates over the last 10 years in my digital marketing agency to help people elevate their platform. And what I did, Stephan, is I collected all of these different templates into the Cornerstone workbooks. And it's at the same website, marketingyourselfbook.com. You can buy access to these workbooks in one package. But what I find so useful about them is that it's not a step-by-step process where you have to start with number 1 and end with number 16. It's more of a choose your own adventure style interaction where you look at your own personal platform and you say, what cornerstone am I weakest on? Is it my positioning? Is it my systems? Like, where do I need the most help? And then I've got 4 workbooks for every cornerstone. And you can use the workbook that's most effective for you to elevate your own platform. So it gives a lot of power to the user, where instead of me telling you what to do, instead you get to choose what it is that you need.
Yeah, very cool. Love it. All right. Well, thank you, Caelan. This was really fun. And we went on some tangents, but I think we delivered a lot of value to our listener. Again, you offer coaching and one-on-one type consulting as well. And that's at, is it at Stellar Platforms or CaelanHuntress.com, or where do we send them for that stuff?
Those are both websites I have. I blog a lot about my personal life and adventures on CaelanHuntress.com, but my name's kind of hard to spell. And so a lot of my professional work I keep on StellarPlatforms.com. And there I've got the case studies of the types of work that I've done for my clients, and I have coaching and consulting programs. And I do offer free consultations. So if one of your listeners thinks, oh, I've got a project, and I think Caelan might be the right person for me to talk about this with, then they can fill out a form on stellarplatforms.com to apply for a free consultation, and then I'll hop on a Zoom call and we can talk about a project and see where it goes.
Awesome. Caelan, it was a pleasure. And listener, take advantage of that free chapter, apply some of what you've learned today, and make it a great week. We'll catch you in the next episode. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, signing off.